everybody, welcome to lesson 2 of our creative writing unit. Today we're thinking about the ideas of sentence forms, sentence openers and how we can punctuate our writing effectively. And we're going to need our work from last lesson along with the other things that you've used in lesson 1. Don't forget that imagination. Okay, so first thing I'm going to ask you to do is have a good think. How many different types of sentences can you think of? I'm going to give you a couple of minutes so you can pause your video now and then we'll think about what these different types of sentences are. Okay, so sentence type number 1, a holophrase. You might not have heard of this one before. This is a different type of sentence, okay? It's a single word sentence, but it sums up a big concept or idea. It's one of those orange words that you might have noticed or heard talked about in your English lessons. When you come back to school, you'll be seeing those up in your English classrooms, okay? Because we're going back to actual English classrooms for English lessons. It's very exciting. But it's this idea that a single word can sum up a big idea just with one word, okay? The second type of sentence that you might want to use, and they're very difficult to use effectively, but they are worth a go if you think you can manage it, is a minor sentence. So a minor sentence is a subordinate clause, a clause that doesn't really make sense by itself. And we'll look at some examples of this in a minute, okay? But we use that for effect. We've got to try and avoid using those as our actual sentences. Okay, the third type, a simple sentence. This is the one that I think everybody can do really quite easily. Okay, so it's a single or main clause, okay, and it has a subject or an object. I ran, I walked, she ran, she kicked the ball, all simple sentences. Okay, the next type of sentence is your compound sentence. This is where you have two main clauses and they're joined by a connective in the middle. She had yellow hair and blue eyes, is an example. Okay, and the final type, okay, this is where we use our commas, okay, is a complex sentence which is at least one main clause and at least one subordinate clause, okay, within one sentence, but there can be many links by commas. Okay, so back to this lovely picture that you've seen, okay. What I've done is I've tried to put all of these sentences into this very short paragraph, and in a second I'm going to ask you to stop your video and try and work out which ones are which. The girl stared into the globe. It amazed her, leaving her with a feeling of awe, joyfully smiling, knowing it was real, alive. She held life in her hands and it was exhilarating. Okay, so I want you to stop your video now, see if you can find all the different sentence types in there. Okay, did you find them all? Hopefully. So, what I want us to think about now is using those same sentences that you've just spent some time looking at. Let's think about the different ways that we've opened each one. The girl. It amazed her. Joyfully. Alive. She. We've got all these different types of sentence openers. Okay? Can you think of any other types of ways of opening sentences? So we'll have a quick think about that for a moment. Okay, so here are some examples of some different ways of opening sentences. So we've got the pronouns, articles, prepositions, in-word verbs, adjectives, and the ly words, the adverbs. Okay, there's a good range of them there. Think about which ones would fit with what you've been writing so far. How can you go back to what you've already done and maybe change some of your sentence openers to fit with these ideas? Okay, moving on now to the final part of this lesson, which is punctuation. So I've put some examples of punctuation on here, but what I really want to draw your attention to is this bit at the bottom. Okay, it's really, really important that at every stage of our writing, we do those really basic things well. Okay, we start our sentences with capital letters. We use capital letters for people's names and places, the proper nouns that we use. Okay? And we remember that we need to put full stops into our writing. We need to end our sentences. I've read so many people's work, and this is at this school over my years of teaching here, but also as an examiner for this question, where people write in sentences, but they don't tell me that they've written in sentences by putting in any punctuation. Okay, and that's critical for your examiner to not think that you don't know how to write in sentences. And sentence demarcation is just worth an awful lot of marks. a lot more marks than your spelling is, and that's the key here. Okay, so we can use a colon for dramatic effect, maybe to put in a pause, maybe to add some really important extra information, but you've really got to try and be careful about using colons for lists. Okay, writing a list in a piece of creative writing very rarely works well. Okay, you can link two clauses together with a semicolon, replace a connective. Take out a because or an and or a so and use a semicolon instead. It's a really easy one, particularly if you get to the end and think, oh, I haven't used one. Go back, find where you've used one of those simple connectives and just take it, cross it out and put the semicolon in its place. You can use a dash for adding extra information. And finally, unless you've got a really, really good reason to use the ellipsis, don't do it. Because it sounds forced, it sounds a bit rubbish, it sounds like you're in year 6 trying to write your best story. Okay, and we're not.
A cliffhanger.
We want to move away from those forced cliffhanger situations. So, the final task then for you to do today is to think about what we just talked about. Think about what you just thought about with all those different sentence forms, because that is the thing that's going to really elevate you. Sentence forms are talked about in lots of different places in that mark scheme. And I want you to either go back to what you've already done in your last lesson and try and improve it. Maybe take out some sentences and change them for different types of sentences, or you can continue your writing, keep thinking about the vocabulary, but now with a real focus on how you can manipulate your own writing to create specific effects. And remember, we've got this picture, but you don't need to just talk about this picture. In fact, please don't just talk about this picture. You can go back to the previous video and look at the range of different images that Miss Sillington has already shown to you. Go back to that PowerPoint if necessary, okay? And carry on with your work.